It is 9 o'clock, May 12th. Thanks everyone for coming to the 8th annual SaveMIHeart Conference. It takes a team to improve cardiac arrest survival in Michigan. Really want to focus on that team aspect today. You'll hear some talks that really kind of make that point more prominent. Also, I've invited several community kind of presenters that will show their work, showing the team that we're using here in Michigan to kind of improve cardiac arrest survival. And before we get started, I just want to ask the question, why are we all here, right? We're here to improve cardiac arrest survival in Michigan. And why are we really here? We're here because we care about Lisa, Harry and Bonita, Robert, Peggy, Marv, Rhonda, Courtney, Kathy, Greg, David, Nicole, Adrian, and Karen, and Matt and Coach Mike. These are the reasons why we're here today. So keep that in mind. And this is why we all do what we do. And before I introduce our first survivor talk, what I want to do is recognize all the survivors in the room. So anybody who is the survivor of cardiac arrest, please stand so we can acknowledge you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Coach Mike Garland. Coach Garland is MSU basketball coach, was a basketball coach for about 22 years and worked with Tom Izzo and retired last June. On August 27th, he suffered a cardiac arrest. Fortunately, a team of bystanders, police, paramedics, and hospital doctors and nurses were able to treat Coach Garland. And since his recovery, Coach Garland has started a foundation called Champions of the Heart. So we're so happy that he's here to tell us his story. So I'd like to introduce Coach Garland to the stage.
Thank you, and good morning. It is indeed an honor to be here this morning to talk to you a little bit about my situation. But you know, I was out talking to one of the presenters out there, and I was just telling him and Lieutenant Brett Justice that it's amazing to me what you learn when something tragic actually happens to you, because I had no idea the impact that the EMS teams and the medical teams make on saving lives. But what is unfortunate about it is the fact that you guys just don't get the credit that you deserve. It's disheartening to me. Tom Izzo, I worked for him for 23 years. But for those of you that don't know, it's more than just a working relationship. He's one of my best friends and I'm one of his best friends. We're actually brothers. You will hear him refer to that anytime you hear him speak. And we said and we talked about my situation several times. And one of the things we brought up and just discussed and it's just mind-boggling to me is that we could go in the Breslin Arena and win a basketball game, and everybody in the country, every media outlet, every reporter, every fan across the nation is there to give us all kind of adulation and pats on the back. But yet and still, when an emergency team arrives and saves people's lives, you get very little or no credit for it. In my mind, that's backwards. And I've coached for a total of 40 years, and I coached 23 years at the college level, and I made a lot of money for doing what I do. But in my estimation, boy, that doesn't compare to what many of you in this room do to help save lives. But before I get started this morning, and I'm going to show you a short video, I want to recognize some people. I want to recognize Lieutenant Brett Justice. Brett, if you would stand up. I want to recognize Scott Wigglesworth. If you would stand up. I want to recognize Barb Davison. No, Bobby Davison, I'm sorry. And and Barbara Booker, I'm sorry. I don't know them as well as I know Brett and Scott. Scott's dad was a great friend of mine before he became the sheriff. And these people are a part of my survival team. I don't like to refer to them as first responders because they do more than just respond when they're called to an emergency medical situation. They actually save lives. So in my mind, they're more of a survival team. And thank God they were there for me on August 27th to save my life. But they deserve every bit of the honor and the praise for what they do, not only for what they did for me, but what they do for other people. Guys, I don't know how many times I've told you this. I get a little emotional. I have 8 grandchildren. I could have probably continued to coach for another 5, 10 years. Tom and I were going to go out together. He's just now having his first. So he doesn't understand how meaningful that is to you once you start having grandchildren. And I think some of you here would understand that. But I'm gonna tell you, the main reason that I retired was for those 8 kids. I wanted to pour into them what I have poured into all of those young men that I have worked with for basically 40 years because I was a high school coach before I was a college coach. And I needed to have that time. I'm 68 years old. And I just said, hey, there needs to be a change right now. But, you know, it's amazing because I think about it and I think about it and I've thought about it a lot, even though it's almost been a year. In August, it will be a year that I wouldn't have been here to do what I set out to do had it not been for my survival team. Jim, if we could get started with the video.
Ready to go, sir? All right. AD. some info if you
Going off.
let's have kids look at hard at this airway. And then we'll switch.
So of course, what you just saw there was me. And had not it been for the high performance and maximum execution of my survival team, I would not be here today. When it all comes down to saving lives, those brave men and women that help during times of health crisis, they can't make mistakes. You know, what's interesting is in that, as I said, I worked for 40 years with young men, and I've been a part of teams as a basketball player myself. So basically throughout my entire life, I've been part of teams. If you want to win, there has to be high performance and maximum execution. Without it, you can't win. And I'm going to say this. When it comes down to saving that life, if one person in my survival team had made a mistake, if Bobby, who was a 911 response call recipient that day, had sent the team to the wrong place, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm gonna use this analogy. I've been in many big games, with the game on the line, with championships on the line, all of that. There's a lot of pressure on that bench. But I tell our guys all the time, tonight it's gonna come down to the wire. And whoever performs the best, that's gonna be the team that wins. And when the pressure is on, you guys are gonna still have to perform at a high performance level and do it with maximum execution without making mistakes. You know, we like to say in our society a lot of times that, well, I just made a mistake. But sometimes you can't make a mistake. You don't get the opportunity to make a mistake. Not if you want to win. And those EMS teams and my team of doctors, they couldn't make a mistake that day. On August 27th, 26 days after I had retired from Michigan State as a basketball coach, my wife and I were headed out to run some errands on a Saturday. We were just going to run to the bank and come back home. Little did I know that not even 5 minutes later, my life would be in jeopardy and in the hands of two unbelievable Good Samaritans, Jason Blackwell and John DeRoe, who arrived at the scene just as it happened. I went out, I hit a tree, and from that point on, I can't remember anything that happened. But Jason and John stopped right away. And those of you that are doctors here, you know that every minute that you go without receiving some form of CPR, your chances of survival drop drastically. And those guys, they made that decision to stop and aid me. I don't want to say in my efforts to survive, but to help keep me going until my survival team could arrive and take over. But I want to go back to also what happened on that day, in that I'm a 68-year-old man. And I don't want to say this in a braggadocious type way, but I'm pretty fit to be 68. I'm pretty fit. At that time, I was running like 4 miles every other day. I was lifting weights. I was probably the strongest that I've ever been in my life. And never, ever in my life had I taken one medication. No high blood pressure, no kind of kidney disease or diabetes, none of that. I had no idea. My chest never hurt. I had no idea this was coming. So it can happen to anybody. But I was able to survive because someone took the time to learn CPR. And I think that's what we're here today, to try to drive home to the public the need for more people to learn CPR and the proper use of AEDs. My wife and I started our foundation. We don't quite know what we're doing right now, but Jim has, he's been trying to help us along the way. But, I'm a religious guy, and people say, well, Mike, why would you let Channel 10 film you like that? And why aren't you embarrassed? What do you mean by embarrassed? I mean, you'd be surprised. People actually say that I would have never done that. Well, you know what? I feel fortunate that it happened to me because of the platform that I have to be able to help, to bring awareness for the need of more and more and more people to learn CPR and the proper use of AEDs. And that's what my wife and I are set out to do. Let me challenge you guys with something. I have a little vision here about this. And when you're a coach, you kind of have to be a visionary. I want to paint this picture in your mind. If each one of us in here convince just 2 people a month to go and learn CPR and the proper use of AEDs within an 8-month period of time, that means by the end of that 8 months, you would have convinced 16 people. As I understand it, there's about 100 of us here today. If that's the case, 600 more people that would know how to save lives using CPR and AEDs properly. Just think about that. Just think about that. And my vision for this, and I hope that my foundation and this group can collaborate a lot more. My vision for this is to make the state of Michigan the #1 state in the union with the most people trained in CPR and AED use of any other state in the union. That would make us #1. And I'm going to close by saying this. Just a thought, and you can apply this thought to anything you want. When our mind is blind to the possibility, our eyes can't see the opportunity. We have an opportunity here today and moving forward to make that vision come true. Thank you.
Coach, I'd love your take on the survival team. And this just shows that survivors are part of that group as well.
Right.